Hello everyone, welcome to PSA powered by Global Reach once again. I am Supriya Acharyya, your host, and today we have with us the University of Salford, and in the discussion today we are talking about the Creative and Media Arts faculty. In our last session we had the Durham University where our focus was on the STEM programs, and this time we have come with the Creative Arts and Media. We have with us Mr. Tim Isherwood from the Faculty of Media and Creative Arts today to discuss and highlight the why a student should choose any course from the Faculty of Creative Arts and Media. And I take this opportunity to welcome him to the session today. Welcome, Tim. Thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon to all you viewers.
Yes, very good afternoon. So without much ado, let us start with the session, and I would request Tim to share something about the University of Salford, which is interesting, and our students find it very intriguing for them to find out more about this University of Salford, and then we move on to the Q&A session. Over to you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's very, very good to be here, and the opportunity to talk to your viewers is very good. So thank you. The University of Salford is coming up on its 60-year anniversary as a university, although it has been a public institution for education and learning in the Salford area for over 120 years. So we have a very strong established university within the middle of the city, and Salford is a city in its own right, but is only separated from Manchester by the River Irwell. So we are a stone's throw from the largest city in the northwest of England, but Salford does not then, it doesn't bask in the shade of Manchester. It is very much a sister city, and so we have a very strong set of joint links to that environment, but also of course we gain enormously from being so close to that large conurbation. So a key part of what we do at University of Salford is deliver applied learning, and so that really has been fundamental ever since we were initially a Royal Chartered Institute. And so this then becomes something that is still prevalent in everything that we teach and all that we deliver, be that STEM subjects or, in my case, from the School of Arts, Media and Creative Technology. We have two campuses. One is the main campus, in which encompasses all of our estate. It is in the middle of the campus. We have a public park, and this was the first ever public park in the UK. So it's a hugely historic and important setting. We have another campus then, which is specifically for the School of Arts, Media and Creative Technology over in Media City, which is about 2 miles away from the main campus. This then is also historically interesting, as it was the place in the Industrial Revolution that cotton would come from across the Atlantic. It would come through Liverpool, up the Manchester Ship Canal, and it would dock in Salford before it was then distributed amongst all the warehouses and factories of the city, developing into the Industrial Revolution that was at that time. That then, of course, many years ago now had been derelict for many years. A huge investment from Salford Council means that now is a thriving metropolis for the creative industries. So we have the BBC and we have our commercial TV station, ITV, alongside a whole host of small to medium-sized enterprises, all working in the film and production area. We are the only university to have a presence in Media City. So we've been there for a dozen years now. Media City really has been developed as an entity over the last 13 or 14 years. So we are established in that environment. And of course, that means it's significantly better for us and for our students to be able to place themselves within that industry, should that be something that they're interested in. So a large part of the school is either design-led, or we have music, or we'll do performance, or of course we have then our digital film, TV and radio output, of which is a really strong part of our school identity. And so having those two places on campus is a really strong footprint for us and for our students to be able to not just work in environments that are technically and academically very strong, but also then they put them very close to the locations that hopefully they will be finding work post-graduation, excuse me.
Excellent. Firstly, congratulations for completing, about to complete the 60th anniversary. And I believe whatever you told us, the students understand from that what kind of an experience they are going to have if they go and study at Salford. And so I mean, we will talk more about it. However, now we move on to the questions quickly. So the first question from my end would be, what distinguishes the Arts and Media faculty at the University of Salford as one of the leading faculties in the UK?
Well, thank you very
If you
much.
could all
So this follows on from what we talked about just before, about the idea of applied learning. So of course, in academia, you will have theory base, and of course, we will teach you the fundamentals and the theory of your specialist subject area. But what we really excel in is allowing students or giving students the opportunity to apply that learning. And so as actually they're not just learning about it from a theoretical base, they're understanding it more from a practical base. So a lot of our learners are what we would describe as kinesthetic, which means that they learn through doing. So a lot of our subjects require students to engage in the process of developing, of creating, and of making, be that film, be that music, be that design, be that performance. All of those aspects of what we do is hugely important that we're able to then offer the student an opportunity to be able to do that in real life. So I would suggest that one of the key factors that we have within the University of Salford, particularly in the School of Arts, Media and Creative Technology, is not only the equipment that we invest in and that we use. Of course, it's of huge importance that students are working on the very latest equipment that they possibly can. So in our Media City campus, you will work on machines, computers, edit suites that are exactly the same specification as you would find within the BBC. So the students know then that when they take placements up in the BBC, they're working with equipment that they're already familiar with, and they've already understood how they can make that, how to use and enable their ideas to find life. But I think underpinning all of this, we have lots and lots of workshops. So areas where students can then go and not just apply the learning that they're taught theoretically, but develop the ideas that they're creating. What's enormously important to us is that students have the autonomy to develop their own ideas. So on every course in my school, it requires students to use their creative imagination to solve a problem. The academic staff will set you the academic challenge, the project or the brief, the module. Your job will be to develop an idiosyncratic approach to that project. Not every project, you won't have examinations, and not every project has a determined or definitive outcome. But what's really, really important is that you then develop your own independent and creative solution to whatever that problem might be. Now, in support of that, and I think this is where we have something that is really not unique, but is a really strong advantage. So beyond your academic staff, we then also have a range of staff called technical demonstrators. And the technical demonstrators effectively run the workshops. These are their spaces with all of the equipment in. And here's a little tip for all of your viewers. If you want to get on really, really well at the university, the first thing you need to do is to get to know your technical demonstrators. These are the people that will enable you and help you to produce the outcomes that you're looking for. It doesn't matter whether that is in an edit suite, whether that's in the print room, whether that is then in a fabric making environment, whether you want to develop a 3D or 3D printed information. Your technical demonstrators are the perfect way to take your academic knowledge and apply that into a physical made set of objects or edited films or whatever it might be. So these two different tiers of staff are hugely important to how you are enabled to then make what it is that you're looking for within your specialist subject area. So I would suggest that's one of the areas that helps us stand out within the context of arts, media, and creative technology.
Yeah. So what I understand is that it is more of a practical oriented learning. Definitely studying abroad is all about practical oriented. However, when it comes to creative arts and media, you are actually, what is expected is creativity, and that is only possible only when you are, applying what you know or what you have in you or you are learning into, put it into action. So that's why I'm sure the students have understood that and they are taking a note of this. So thank you so much, Tim, for that. My next question: how does the University of Salford support international students in enhancing their employability and career prospects during and after their studies?
Okay, great question. So during their studies, for every student, irrespective of whether you're an international student or a student from the UK, we hope to not differentiate between where you're from or who you are. It's hugely important then that we embed professional practice projects and modules within every single course. So at every stage, if you're an undergraduate or if you're a postgraduate, what you'll do is effectively um, you'll align yourself with the professional industry that's associated with your subject area. So for example, if you are interested in production management, if you are interested in fashion design, if you're interested in music, not every single module, but you will have at least one, if not two modules within the course of your academic year that asks you to align with industry. So we do that in a number of ways. All our staff have lots and lots of industrial contacts. Most of our staff have come with industrial background or had experience in that industry beforehand. So not only do they still have those contacts, we're able to invite those contacts into the university and they will come and speak, they will come and set projects. And of course, you can sit and respond to what it is that they say. Often then, of course, they will be able to then award placements over a short period of time. So it'll be important. These are very competitive. So it's important that as a student, you're ready to think about what it is that you want to get from these placements and persuade people that you're the person that wants to take up this opportunity. But also one of the things I think is of great strength is the live project. And one of my favorite areas really is because it enables a greater number of students to engage in a project. And I think that's for me is more important. Our job at the university is to offer the broadest possible experience to the widest number of students. If we have maybe two placements that are associated with one course and we have 40 students on that course, then you can see that's going to be quite difficult. That becomes quite competitive, as it will be post-graduation in the jobs market, of course. But actually, we want the most amount of students possible engaging with that industrial contact. So with the live project, it means that maybe for a 2 week or even sometimes just a 1 day project, an industrial practitioner will come, will set you a task. All the students will go away. They'll come up with their outcomes, and at the end of that session, they'll present them to that industry leader. And of course, from there, you will get direct feedback as to how that would work in application, how that would work in the industry, where your idea was good, and more importantly, where your idea perhaps needs more work. It's really important, I think, to say something you touched upon before, the idea of creativity and applied creativity. You can't assume you're going to get all of these things right first time round. And the reason why you need to apply them is because you learn an awful lot. The idea in your head is one thing, the idea in your hand is entirely different. And so being able to understand those two different things and apply that knowledge is what's really important. So, of course, a key consideration for staff and therefore for students is getting the feedback from those professionals, not only our professional academics, but also from those that we invite from industry to come and give you that immediate direct feedback. This is a great idea, but it needs X and Y. This idea could be really interesting if we just did this and this. So that gives you hopefully the opportunity to see things in a way that you were not able to see beforehand. So that's really key to what we do. And secondly, then I think in terms of post-graduation, what we are very keen to identify with our students is the transferable skills that they're learning once they're in education. Now, these often can be described as kind of soft skills, but actually I think they're absolutely essential. Your ability to work in a group, your ability to understand leadership roles, to think about how do you take charge of a situation and how do you solve a problem? So creative thinking, but also analytical thinking. These are things that are hugely important in any industry. It doesn't matter whether it's the creative industries. It's it's a key aspect of your employability and will set you apart from anybody else is understanding what am I doing today? What is it I've taken from today that is something that's not on the headline ticket of what I'm supposed to be learning, but is something that actually I know now that I didn't know before. So a good example is the presentation. Well, two things, presentation and a group project. So often we get students to do presentations, and the first time round, almost everybody dislikes it hugely because, of course, you're stood up, you're often talking in front of your peers. It's a very, very nerve-wracking and precious time, but you only get better at that by doing it. And so actually there's nothing worse than not knowing what you're talking about in a presentation. But of course, what's hugely important is understanding how to do that, how to not talk too long, as maybe I'm doing right now, but how to also then be concise and be considerate of what it is that you want to do and what does your audience want to hear. But for me also then the group project is key. Working in groups of two can be quite difficult. Working in groups of 5 brings a different set of problems. And of course, we enable our students to do that because it's hugely important that you understand the idea of a role within a group. In a professional context, everybody has a role, everyone has a job within that group. So how do you define that? How do you decide that? Who's the person that oversees it? Who's the person that does a lot of the running around work? Who's the person that brings it all together? All of these things are absolutely vital. And so those skills are not to be taken lightly. They're very significant, and the things that you can draw on immediately as soon as you get into work, and it will set you apart as someone who has a much broader experience than just simply your subject knowledge.
Right. So I believe it's like, the first year or these first 2 years of any student when they start working, the learning and they make mistakes and again they learn. This thing is already being done through the live projects and these presentations already during the, study that they do at Salford.
Exactly that. Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So the next question. Does the location of the University of Salford in Manchester provide a strategic advantage for students? If so, could you please highlight these benefits?
Sure. So as I said before, obviously Salford and Manchester are almost sister and brother to each other in terms of their closeness. And so, of course, this makes a very, very large city. We have around about 100,000 students come in and out of that city every year. We have obviously Manchester University, Manchester Metropolitan University, and Salford University are all significant universities within the UK. So what this means, of course, is that we have a large number of graduates that also move into the environment, and they stay within that localized Greater Manchester and Salford region. So, of course, what that means is we've got a really, really interesting and diverse community. I think it's important to say that Manchester and Salford is a particularly multicultural city and has been for many, many years. It's not difficult to find supermarkets that cater for specific types of cultural or international need. It's not difficult to find an Eastern European shop selling particular food. It's not difficult at all to find an Indian shop within Manchester and within Salford. So it's that I think is important, because not only does that cater for specifically a community, it opens that out to the wider community. So there's a much greater sense of understanding and awareness and appreciation for others and the notion and what it is that they contribute to make a wider culture. So I've lived in Manchester for a very long time. I was born here. I've lived elsewhere, but I've always come back to Manchester. And every time I walk around the city, from the University of Salford, it's a very, very short walk into Manchester city centre. There's a train station on campus that takes literally about 5 minutes to get into the city. I think actually, if we look at in a straight line, as the crow might fly, the University of Salford is much nearer to the middle of Manchester than either Manchester University or Manchester Metropolitan University. So I think what's important is to just put that to your viewers, that it's a place where you can feel safe, you can feel welcomed, you can feel recognized, and you feel supported. That's very, very important to reference that. But in terms of arts, media, and creative technology, then Manchester and Salford are the second largest creative industries in the UK outside London, which also means then they're the second largest creative industries in the entirety of Europe. So we talked about the Media City project. That now is in its 12th, 13th, 14th year of development, and it just moves from strength to strength to strength. When we first opened that campus, I worked there for a few years, and it felt like it was full of office buildings and there was no sense of culture there. People came off the tram and they disappeared into their buildings. They did all their exciting and energetic creative work, and then they disappeared again because there was no sense of culture or society around that space. Now, of course, all those years later, it's now a thriving place where people will come at the weekend. They will come to the Imperial War Museum. They'll come to the Lowry Theatre. They'll come to see the shops and the restaurants and just to spend time there. It's really wonderfully developed. It's a really interesting place to spend some time. And with the tram links, it's a very, very easy commute to get to anywhere around the Greater Manchester area. But of course, what's really important, I think, and what really helps the University of Salford and our graduate students is that because of the headlines like the BBC and Doc 10 and ITV, this then attracts investment from small to medium enterprise businesses who are often looking for a small, diverse cohort of 5-6 people that are in the creative industries in the broadest sense, often in a kind of film production environment, they're the ones that this is where we place students. This is where the majority of our students are placed, is in these entities. And because then you're into a place which is relatively new, they're full of lots of ideas, they're full of young people, and they want to go somewhere. They've got ambition. And it really is a really excellent way of us being able to not just place students, but then develop that wider creative network. And so we can be confident that actually working in the UK, graduates can find a space there to be able to work and develop their further careers.
Yeah, so from your description, it's for me. I could visualize Salford and Manchester. I hope our students are also able to do that. And as I now feel like going to Salford and seeing it with my eyes, I hope the students also feel the same and they consider studying at the University of Salford to experience the same as well. Okay, moving on to the next question. What key factors should students consider when selecting universities in the UK, and what makes the University of Salford stand out as a preferred choice among them?
So obviously the UK has a huge number of universities, huge, 120, 130 universities. So that choice, of course, is huge. And what that means really is it's like you're shopping, or you are shopping, really. You're shopping for education rather than shopping for shoes or for a car or whatever. But of course, it's a very, very expensive product. And so, as you would expect, when you're doing any kind of serious shopping, you really need to do your research. And so, yes, of course, it's important that your friend or your cousin reference this place. Of course, you should take word of mouth as.
And your future is dependent on that. Sorry
Of course,
to
absolutely, of
interrupt.
course, yeah.
Yeah.
No question. So the first thing you do is probably look on the website. So I would encourage you to do that. If you have then a set of courses that you're interested in and you know the specifics of what you want to do, start to do that research. But of course, then it is also worth reaching out to recruitment agents and to counsellors. They have a huge amount of information, as of course I would expect with, as you well know, given that that's your role. That's a great source of information, and I think you can tell a story that often is different to others. But then, of course, it's about the people that you know. So let's think about who is it that you know that's been to these places, and that word of mouth is very important. If you want to study in London, then you should be aware, of course, that that's as expensive as you could possibly get, and the Greater London region. If you want something that's a little more affordable, then of course you're starting to look further outside the London area. So Manchester and Salford is about an hour and 30 minutes on the train. You could drive there in 2.5 hours, perhaps. So it's very, very accessible. Manchester obviously has a huge international airport, and so is accessible by airplane without any problem whatsoever. And the University of Salford is, I would say, maybe a 25-minute drive from the airport, so not very far at all. I think it's about knowing what it is you want to do is really key. The more you can specify what you want. So we know if you're looking for something like international business management, then of course, you're not sure every single university will run that course, and that's as it is. But if you're interested in the creative arts, then think about your subject area and what is it that you want to learn. We do lots of specialist teaching, and so every university will have its own take on what it is you want to do. So think about where it is that you think will offer you the best education. What do you want from that education? You want, of course, to be stimulated. You want to be engaged. You want the opportunity to succeed. Now, where do you think you might be able to do that? And what is it that you want from this? Do you want to potentially look at staying in the UK post-graduation? Do you want to return home and take your skills back to wherever it is that you came from? Do you want to move to an entirely different country? And of course, all those options are worth considering in terms of what is it that I'm getting. You should be looking for high quality staff. You should be looking for a really interesting location that you think is going to give you something beyond your studies. Now, let's face it, you will spend most of your time studying. That is what you will be here for, but also you have to live. And so the idea of finding somewhere interesting, if you're interested in a city, then think about where those major metropolitan cities are in the UK. If you want something that's a little quieter, you want to live in a town, then again, you've got lots of satellite towns that exist outside and around those major cities. I would suggest that Manchester, well, I know for a fact because it's where I lived for many, many years. Post-COVID, Manchester is growing faster than any other city in the UK. And so it's extremely vibrant. It's, as we suggested, it's multicultural. Salford again now just expands and expands, and so really it's very difficult to know where Manchester finishes and Salford starts. Often you don't even recognise you've crossed the river because there's all sorts of information and buildings and production work that's happening around both edges of those cities. So there's an excitement there. It's full of young people, and I think that's also something that is great. Hopefully, it should be something that enthuses you. You have to live as well as you have to study, and hopefully, if you're comfortable, if you're interested in the place that you live in, then this also feeds into your ability to study well and to engage with your subject area. Being comfortable in all sorts of different contexts, being comfortable mentally, being comfortable socially, being comfortable in a space that you live in, all helps for your study to be better, to be smarter, to be more engaged, and to be deeper. And really, that's what we want, is to try and engage students as best as we possibly can.
Yeah, Tim, I can't agree more than this, because for a student, even I believe that, more than affordability, what is more important is, because they are going to live in a different country, it is very important that they are comfortable, they don't feel homesick, they are engaged, and then only they'll be able to actually, take the education the way it is expected to be.
Absolutely. It's not to be, it's a very big deal moving country to study.
Absolutely,
Your
absolutely.
experience is going to be very significant. It will change
Yes.
your life, and hopefully in the best way possible. In terms of homesickness, what I think we have in Salford and in Manchester is we have a very large Indian community. And so it's spread out all over the city. It's not in a small little diaspora, it's spread out throughout the city. And so hopefully that's something that you will always find, if should you need it, kindred spirits. If you just need that you just need those particular roti that you just really haven't been able to have, that will make you feel like you're back at home. You'll be able to find those, you'll be able to make those. You'll have somebody that will certainly help you with that process. So again, that engagement in the city is important, because not only does the city want to engage with you, it's hugely important that you find your way in that space to find the things that you need. And yes, of course, finding things that are from your own country is very satisfying, but hopefully part of your experience is to explore new things. And that's really what we want from all of our students, is to engage with new.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so the next question is, who would be the ideal student to pursue programs within the arts and media faculty, and what advice would you offer to those aspiring to study in this field?
Okay, so yeah, fantastic question. It is students who want to engage with their studies. You're not here for just simply to tick a box. You're here to engage with your subject area. Now, of course, in the School of Arts, Media and Creative Technology, we're not going to give you a generalized education. We're going to give you a very specific education. And so what we want is students that are engaged in that process. You need to know a little bit about why you want to do this subject. You want to be able to commit to it. You'll have heard from your colleague at Durham, no doubt, who talked about STEM. Of course, you'll be driven and you'll be persuaded by social pressure, by parental pressure, to want to study these subjects that apparently look at the idea of a very straightforward and very strong and steady career in a STEM-based work environment. That's all absolutely fine. It feels like sometimes you need to be brave to make the decision to study a creative subject area, because history anecdotes suggest that this is a less stable career path. I think, as we've already talked about, in the creative industries in the UK, that's absolutely not true now. Again, post-COVID, it's the fastest growing sector that we have of all the sectors in the UK. And this is to do with gaming, to do with film, to do with design, to do with performance, to do with all of those things and all of the associated subjects that sit alongside it. It's absolutely booming. And so it's thinking about what those opportunities are and where they are. Do your research. Don't come at us without really an idea. If you'll know from students that turn up in your office and say, well, I'm not quite sure what I want to do, that's not going to work. We need you to know what it is you want to do. Even if that's fairly broad, we can then offer that level of specialism, but be engaged, be driven by your idea and
You
your
need to
passion.
be passionate enough, I believe. That passion for that subject is very important in case of creative
Yeah, for
arts.
any student, your passion for learning should be the key driver. And
Absolutely.
then if you have that for your subject, then of course those two things are, you're the perfect student for us. We want to see that you are engaged with your subject. We want to know that you're enthusiastic about your subject, but more importantly, that you want to know more. We don't expect a student to arrive and know everything. Of course not. That's not how that learns. That's not how that works. That's what you're buying. You're buying or you're paying for the opportunity to learn. It's a very strange thing to buy, academic education, because of course you can, with most things like a house or a car or a clothes, some clothes, you'd buy them, you'd wear them, or you'd drive them off the parking lot, and then that's it. You have them. In education, of course, you pay for it, and then you have to work really, really hard to make it worth anything. So it's a very, very unusual thing, and it requires you to be fully engaged in that process. It's hugely important. We know then that often we'll find with international students, for a variety of reasons that are not the student's own, maybe it's to do with CAS, or it's to do with visa issuance, or it's to do with airplane flights and affordability, that students often then go, oh, well, I'm going to arrive just a few weeks late because the prices are a little bit lower. That makes it so difficult for you to do that. Of course, we understand the pressures that you're under, but it means that you're under more. You've moved to a new country. You're a few weeks late, so you've missed some of your education already, and you have to start immediately running as fast as you possibly can to try and catch up. That's so difficult. You put yourself under so much pressure that in being as prepared as you possibly can, not only in terms of your subject knowledge, but thinking about where am I going to live? When do I need to arrive in the country? When do I need to make my CAS application? Or when do I need to receive my CAS and put my application in so as I can then, of course, apply for my visa and raise all the funds that I need for, et cetera, et cetera. So those types of students that are well prepared and that are engaged are the ones that we really, really want to see more of, because they're essential skills in your ability to succeed in your studies. And like I said before, all we want to do is enable an environment where students can succeed to the best of their ability.
Absolutely. So orientation is very important for students. So, and they need to be, more than merit. What is more, what Salford looks at more is your passion and your engagement in the subject area that you want to study. So keeping that point in mind, definitely students understand that you can always apply and see your chances of getting through base if you are really, really passionate and you want to study at Salford. Okay, moving on. The last question. For the fall 2026 intake, are applications to the University of Salford still open? Additionally, what scholarships or bursaries may international students be eligible for if they choose to join this intake?
Okay, so all of the programs in the School of Arts, Media and Creative Technology will be open. We only have one intake, so there's maybe one or two courses that have a January intake, but the vast majority of them, all of them really, only recruit for September. But that means also then that we don't, because we're not necessarily about volume, we are obviously about looking for specialist students that have specialist sets of skills. Our courses don't have a cap, and so any of the courses that you see from University of Salford that you want to apply for, you will be able to apply for, certainly from a postgraduate sense, up until all the way through till probably the end of, middle of the summer. But of course, bear in mind, the later you leave it, the more difficult it is for it to be processed and for your CAS to come through, etc., etc. But I'm sure your viewers are more than intelligent enough and experienced enough and well counseled, of course, to understand how all of that works. So in terms of scholarship, what we use is we have an automatic scholarship process. So no, you won't need to apply for a scholarship. It's not a competition. There's no sense of will I, won't I. Your scholarship, once you've made an application and you've been given an offer, as long as you move through the processes of potentially, we won't ask students to come for an interview. We might ask them to develop a portfolio depending on the subject. We might ask them for a show reel if they're developing a film. But more often, it's just a way of us being able to ascertain the skill level of the student. So really important, I think that, of course, we will look at your prior learning and the grades you have from your schooling. But actually, we think that there's a better opportunity for students if we can see the actual work that you make. So for us, the grades are kind of important, but not as important as the skills that you might have. And so actually you might not have great qualifications, but you might also be a very, very good creative thinker. We know that this goes hand in hand with the sorts of students that we want. The absolutely brilliant students that get absolutely fantastic grades in all areas generally don't tend to be creative practitioners. So it's really important that we can see your skills and your abilities. However, post that, once you've met all the conditions of your offer, then effectively we will just apply, depending on your prior grades, your GPA, we will apply either a silver or a gold scholarship. And that means that's either £2,500 or £3,000 discount on top of the £17,500 that we have. Secondly to that, of course, we also have an instalment payment process. So students can then, having made their initial deposit, which is £5,500, you would then have 7 instalments to make, again, as a postgraduate student, to be able to then complete all the payments that you need for that program. So you don't need to make an application. It's a scholarship based, and the scholarship is based on your prior ability. But then, of course, we try and make it as straightforward as we possibly can, because we understand the difficulties and the complexities that an international student to the UK has to go through to even get here. We know it's not simple. We know it's not cheap, and we try and make it as not only affordable, but as simple as we possibly can for students to be able to make that criteria.
Absolutely. Kudos to the University of Salford for this initiative. Nothing that I have heard from any other university's side, that you take the installment fees in installment basis, so that the students are able to take this opportunity of studying at Salford. Well, Tim, it was a wonderful conversation. I had a wonderful time talking to you, talking about Salford and Manchester and the university and the courses, and about how a student can choose Salford, who should choose Salford. And we look forward to having you again on one of such sessions. And I would like you to share your closing remarks before we close the session.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to talk to you today, and I hope that's useful to your viewers. What I'd like to do as a closing remark is just offer, if they need further advice, then they can contact me directly. I'm very happy for you to share my email address. If they have any questions, I can happily, for either you, your counsellors, or for any potential students.
That will be wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. We will definitely try and connect any student who is listening to us. If you feel that you would like to have a one-on-one conversation, then do let us know. You can visit our virtual office at planstudyabroad.com, where you can directly communicate with us on a virtual call, and then we can set up a meeting with Tim for a detailed discussion. So thank you very much for watching us today. Please do like us and follow us on our social media handles. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon so that you stay updated on the latest information and latest sessions like this. Let us know which other university or other faculty you would like us to talk about in our next session. Thank you.